Okay, so we have to talk about this clip that was sent to me. Every once in a while, I get sent something or I find something on the internet that gives me what they call secondhand embarrassment. It really does. And almost always, almost every time, it is someone in my age group or older complaining about something and trying to compare modern stuff to the way it was when we grew up. Newsflash, nobody likes when you do that. Like, think about it. When we were younger and we loved music, and our parents would say, oh, but in my day, music was real music. It's not music anymore. Like, we hated that. So just think about that. You are now that old person yelling at the clouds, screaming that the stuff was better when you were growing up. And it's just not true. Things change and things are going to be fine. But the more you complain about it, the more it's just an issue. And I will say, the reality of it is either you have outgrown the stuff that you're complaining about, or the stuff you're complaining about has outgrown you. It's one or the other. And it's okay to let it go. And if it's meant to be, the love for it will return. If it's not, then you're better off that way. It's better off to be healthy and not be upset and angry all the time. We have this clip that was sent to me. We're going to look at this of a comic book shop owner. He's not an artist. He's not a writer, but he's a comic book shop owner that, this clip is taken from a longer segment, but I can't find it anywhere. So anyway, we're going to watch this clip, and he's really angry about modern comics, and he has a big opinion about this. And so we're going to watch this, and then I have a lot to say about it. Like this clip, I've watched it a few times now. I have so much to say about this. I think it's just tone deaf. I think it's a problem. But let's go ahead and watch the clip, and then we'll talk about this. Here we go.
Most of these new writers don't have the love of comics like these older writers had. And all they care about is, how can I put myself in the book? No, we don't care what you would do if you were Iron Man. We don't care who you are. You're writing Tony Stark. You're not writing yourself in a book. If that's the case, write your own comic with you in it. No one will read it because nobody cares. People grew up, growing up loving Peter Parker, loving Miles Morales, loving all these Captain America. We don't need you to put your input in it. Just write Steve Rogers. Don't write Steve Rogers. What would Steve Rogers be if I was Steve Rogers? That's not how it works. But that's, again, how most of these new people write nowadays. That's why most of the stuff is shit. Because we don't care what you would do, because we don't care about your life whatsoever. Just write a book, get paid for what you do, get paid for what you're supposed to be doing, and make it a good story.
All right, so many issues with this clip. So many issues with this clip. All right, let's unpack this a little bit. So first of all, this is massively, massively disrespectful to writers. Everything he said in this clip, it doesn't matter if you're one of the people that he was talking about he hates, or you're just a writer that was completely, outside of his target. That is so disrespectful to talk about writers this way. Writers write stories that they're passionate about. They put their heart and soul into these stories to make them the best they can possibly make them. And that does include pulling from life experience. Matter of fact, some of the best stories from writers come from life experience. I want the writers to have identities. I want them to write stories that make it unique and different from the stories previously written by other people. That's the reason why sometimes people buy comic books based on the run of it and who's writing it, who's drawing it. There are writers, like if a writer that I love went into a character to write a story for a character that I don't typically read, I might give it a shot because I like the writer. So writers are paramount when it comes to writing. The fact that he's like, just take your paycheck and just write these characters. We don't care about anything else. We don't care about you. We don't care about this or whatever. Newsflash, Steve Rogers, Peter Parker, these characters, Tony Stark, they're not real people. So every writer that steps into that role to write those characters is writing from their point of view, from their perspective. That's the point. There is no real Tony Stark. There's no real Steve Rogers. There's no real Peter Parker. There's no real Clark Kent. These characters are not real. They're all written by different people. Matter of fact, I have my notes over here. I want to point out that you have different runs. We'll look at Captain America, for example. So there was a lot of really strong, prolific runs from Captain America. Some of the ones that I really love are like Jack Kirby, obviously. The OG, Joe Simon. Some of the other ones that I'm Mark Waid. Mark Waid was another really good one. Dan Jurgens, Steve Englehart. There's so many other writers for Captain America who have injected a little bit of themselves into the stories, which makes the character so much more rich, makes the lore so much more rich. You have different runs, you have different versions. It is important for the ecosystem of comics to do that. That's the way they function. And all of those writers loved what they're doing. They loved writing these stories. I got news for you. Getting into comic book writing, I don't think anyone, and I would need a citation because you made some very broad accusations there. No one gets into comics for the paycheck and doesn't love what they're doing. That just doesn't happen. If somebody is working in the comic book industry, they are there because they love doing it. They're not there just for a paycheck. There's many other fields you could get into where not only is the pay better for you, but doing independent stuff might be better for you as a creative. But you might want to work at Marvel. Maybe you've always wanted to write a story about Iron Man. Maybe you've always wanted to write a story about Spider-Man, and you get that opportunity to do it. You do it because you love it. Saying that the writers that are writing modern comics don't love them is so fucking disrespectful. It's just laughable that he would even say this as someone who has been reading comics for 30 years. To say something like that is just absolutely, just totally disrespectful. The next thing I want to talk about is the whole comments about like Peter Parker and people doing self-inserts and things like that. The reality is that all characters are based on something or someone that the writer is familiar with to a degree, or at the very least wants to write about, because that's the whole point of writing. That is the whole point of sitting down and being creative, is creating a fantasy world and pulling in elements of what you know and pulling from things that you have read, things in the real world, things around you, and putting it into a story. A lot of fans of comic books, at least from my age group and older, have forgotten how to have fun. They've forgotten what comic books represent. Just the vast majority and select, like right now we have such a variety of comics that we can buy. There's almost a comic out there for every single reader. There's a comic out there that's available for almost every single thing that anybody could possibly want. You might have to dig a little bit for it, but it does exist. But let's take a look back at the OG diversity character. You're not going to be ready for this one. Maybe you forgot about it. Maybe a lot of people forgot about this. But when Peter Parker was created as Spider-Man, he was created as a younger superhero in the lead of his own stories, because back then, usually it was an older man and a younger sidekick. All of the superhero sidekicks were the younger ones, and the superheroes, the main characters, were the older ones. Peter Parker was created as a diversity character in a market where every other superhero was older. He was created to reflect the youth of the day when he was made. So he was injected into the market as a risk. He was a risky character for them to put out because he was reflecting the youth of the day. Now, we may have forgotten about that because we have grown up with Peter Parker and Spider-Man for so many years that we forget that he was, at the time, a diversity character when he was introduced. Matter of fact, we can look at characters like Wonder Woman. The creator of Wonder Woman said that she was a feminist icon, that she was an allegory, that she's a character that was created to represent a strong, powerful woman, the ideal woman in society, a leader based on her feminist ways. This was why the character was created. So Wonder Woman, in a lot of ways, was a diversity character. So we look at today's market and we look at characters, we go, that's a checkbox, that's this, that's that. You can go back and look at classic comic books and classic created characters and see that they've always been pushing the envelope. There's always been diversity in comics. It's always existed. It's always been something that pushes against the culture. That is what art is. That's what art does. There's a lot of comic books that have done that over the years, but we've lost sight of that. So complaining about that stuff is just absolutely ridiculous. It's so out of touch, and it's gatekeeping. If I were coming into comics for the first time, say, for example, I watched one of the Marvel movies, and I'm like, hey, I want to read the comics. I want to know the history of these characters. Let me go into the comic book shop and try and find something on this, right? And you encounter someone like this, and they immediately start doing all of this, and you're just there to be a fan. You want to read up. You want to find some OG stuff, maybe even some new stuff to sort of compare the two, whatever you want to do, but you're coming in for the first time and you immediately get a gatekeeper at the door of their comic book shop. Why would you go and buy stuff from someone like this? I don't understand how this makes any sense in the fandom to be this way, to be this jaded and this upset and this angry about everything all the time. We have forgotten what it's like to have fun. We have forgotten that these are comic books. And a lot of people that are arguing about it either are out of touch with modern comics or forgot that comic books are not just made for old people. They are made for everyone, especially the youth. That's what comic books are designed for. They're designed now to reach across the whole spectrum of ages. And if you don't get it, you don't have to. Like I said earlier, if you used to love something and it's not there anymore, you need to let it go. And if it comes back, if that passion, that love comes back, then it was meant to be. I know it's cliche, but it's absolutely true. I don't vibe with this video at all. I don't agree with the comments made by this person. And again, secondhand embarrassment, because I feel like we need to be more welcoming as a community and stop acting like everything has to be catered to us. Guess what? If there's a bunch of comic books that come out that I don't like, I don't have to engage with them. All I have to do is go out and buy the stuff that I actually want to read, or go read some older stuff that I really loved when I was growing up. All those options are still there for me. This kind of stuff turns people away from the fandom, and this will be the death of the comic book industry. People gatekeeping other people from coming into the fandom. This will be the death of the industry, not the industry itself. Comic books will survive. There's been plenty of times when we thought they were going to die. The comic book bust of the 90s. That's a history lesson. Go look it up. Almost all the comics thought they were going to go under because they sold millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of comics, and then it just came crashing down. They're still here. We're still here. And there's been burst in the bubble between now and, from between then and now. But gatekeeping will be the one thing. If we turn people away from the fandom, it will die 100%. Look, let me know what your thoughts and opinions are on this down in the comments below. Leave a like on this video and subscribe if you're brand new to my channel so we can talk more about this. I can't wait to hear from you guys. See you later. Have a great week, and we'll talk next time.